Ai tēnei taku mihi aroha ki a koutou, ki raro te korowai o te waka kaiora, ngā mihi. Kei hea koe Lionel, you're not that funny looking, better show your face. No reira whānau, anō he mihi aroha tēnei ki a koutou. E nohana hau, te tahi o ngā kumara e tupu ai ki roto o ngā māra o Ngāti Hine, te tai tokerau. Been here in Tāmaki, tatania te whātau, whātekau tau, so I've been in Auckland for tatania 40 years, but been brought up and loved my upbringing in Matawaia ki te kāinga. Ai, kei a koe Lionel.
O tātai, kei te rongo?
Kei te rongo, engari, kare mata he titiro.
Worst case scenario, I couldn't get my camera on, so we're still working through some technical difficulties. Aroha mai. Tēnā tātou nā whānau, e mātakitaki mai ana, e are mai o koutou taringa. Tēnā tātou, mihi atu te rōpū te waka kaiora, Jess, Geneva mā, tēnā koutou hei whakatika o tātou nei waka, tēnā koutou katoa.
E awai te mea.
Trying to fix my camera. Aroha mai whānau. Trying to look for my camera.
You know we can plant 5,000 kumara, but you think that we can plant our fingers on our IT with our laptops?
If you'd like to just tell us go next, and we'll do it at our end. Kei te pai.
Oh.
Kei te pai, Nezek, we'll go to the next.
No, I think I saw a thing down the bottom.
Aye, that's yours. Kei a koe mana.
He kākano tērā. No reira whānau, te mea anō he tino mihi nui tēnei ki a koutou, ki roto tō mātou motu. Just want to give you guys a bit of a background around where our location is and where we're currently based here in Tāmaki ki te Tonga in South Auckland, and being since 1986, which was on our introduction. One of the things that was really stood out for us is knowing that all of us in all our different spaces around the country and around the world that have zoomed in today is that we all have had the blueprint of our tupuna, of our parents, our grandparents, and it is our role to step into them and carry it to the next generation. Hence, when Papatuanuku came about, it was based around the need to be able to, that our kaumatu and kuia at that time that have identified the dilution of our reo mātou tikanga, mātou whanaungatanga. So when our whānau all moved to the urban city here in Tāmaki and across the world, across the country, is that the ahika numbers at the ahika shrunk. So there was only our kaumatu and kuia left back home, and so they followed the mokopuna through to the urban setting. When they came through, that's why they identified. When we talk about food insecurity and the losses in that space at that particular time, this was te reo ngā tikanga, the insecurities around that space. Hence, Papatuanuku Marae came about. The reason why the name of Papatuanuku was that the kaumatu and kuia from that time identified that Mother Earth belonged to all of us. Ahakoa no hea mātou. Ahakoa no wai ngā whānau e nohana i Tāmaki. So it was a unit. It was one big table, one big tepu that they needed to feed. When we talk about kaioranga, not only in the essence of food, but in regards to the nourishment of the wairua, the nourishment of our tikanga, and the importance that we have in regards to sharing that with our whānau. So we'll be able to cover a little bit of that as we go through our kōrero.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I just wanted to reflect back on the humble beginnings, and that in an urban context, we have to remember Whaiadau Wihungi, Whaimiri Knight and Uncle Jerry Moana, who were part of a delegation that went back to Japan to retrieve our 9 strands of kumara. I think about Carmen Kirkwood. And moving into this next slide, you know, the South Auckland, we think about mana whenua. E tupu ake au I te rohe nei o hua kaiwaka, te uri tupuna o te wai o. Hey!
Hey, kei reira koe.
Koe mai he whanau. Anyway, te uri tupuna o te wai o hua, me o nā hapu o Tainui waka, e kia nei te kōrero I tēnei wā, te pei o te waka o Tainui. I acknowledge Ngāti Tamauho, Ngāti Teata, a whānau e te puaha o Waikato, Pokakoe, Pukaki Marae, te Puia Marae, and talking about te Puia Marae, that's where the pōwhiri happened for, in the return of Whaiadau, bringing the kumara seed strands back to Mangere, and was sponsored by, I think about the funding that was given for our kaumātua kuia to be able to take the trip to retrieve our seedlings. That was from the infamous, what was his name? The botanist, David Bellamy, I think it was, that helped fund the trip. So I think about Nanako and Minhinnick and the industrial development of all this, the para, that's the steel mill in Glenbrook, and also the sewage plant here in Te Manuka o Hoturoa. So the food bowl was Te Manuka nuku o Hoturoa, the Manuka harbour, but at the current state it's in, it's no longer that, it's no longer the food bowl. So we're in this position of restoration.
Kia ora mo tērā. So we're going to take you through a bit of a hikoi around what we have to what this particular kete looks like here in South Auckland. Of course, you would have seen it all on the news and on all the negative media that's happening out there. When we talk about food insecurity, the rising of crime, the disconnected rangatahi, the lack of mahi for our whānau, a community in need, in meaningful change. What used to be the quarter-acre house block, you can now have 12 houses in that same block, but they're going up. So there's ngā green spaces, so there are less green space for our mokopuna to play in, let alone for our whānau to grow in. So we've had to change the way that we've had to evolve in that space.
Yep, so the perception of the norms, yeah, is this food security, and there is the golden arches, and we're hoping at our marae, we had a bit of a discussion to appropriate that golden arch and turn it into a green one, turn it into like a marae McDonald's, but yeah, saturated with this, the norms, fast food, the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. And this is what we're trying to change, is the landscape, and this is part of the norms for us here in Mangere. And we think about what Whai talked about. There's so much development that's going on here, incredible amount of housing that's going into this little space in Mangere. No longer do we have single dwelling. We have 2-level, 3-level, 4-level housing that's going on, 2-way streets turning into 1-way streets now. So there's a lot of pressure on our whānau. And the other part about that one is after COVID, during COVID, people understood we're in a dilemma around where we are in this food system, and seeing the lines going right back to Idlewild. If you're familiar with Beta Drive, you see the lines go over the bridge, past Mātauranga Marae, down towards Idlewild, never seen before. And I think people were asking themselves some of that question, is this it? Seeing people fight over toilet paper, and then having our kaumātua kuia and our single parent mothers in line.
Yeah. Choices are limited and of low quality, leading to higher levels of chronic diseases. This leads to more dialysis centers, or as we call them, the ambulances at the bottom of the hill. So you all know that that the health system here in South Auckland alone, they're literally big hospital rooms, just layered and layered with our whānau all rigged up to the machines. It actually looks like a library, and they rotate them. So that's where we're part of the doctor in the ambulance, gonna make a change. You should be the driver so you can drive it another way. Opa, opa, taku aroha. Let's go back. So these are common forms of disruptions here in South Auckland, in South Otaamaki, and kei a koe Lionel.
Yeah, so we've always been involved in trying to be the resistance towards what people think is the norms, and you know, we're holding people accountable, especially these wholesales. So there's more wholesales, more alcohol shops around here in every corner, not just in Mangere, but in South Auckland. So we're hoping to change that one.
Fine. So South Auckland, Mangere alone is like the mecca of fast foods. We've got 3 lots of McDonald's, 3 K fries, bakeries on every corner, alcohol outlets next to the dairy, next to the school, and next to the bakeries, and next to all where our mokopuna go to school. So we have all that, you know, that we have that type of lifestyle. One of the things that make a big impact on all of us, and this is why it's so important around kai, you know, whāngai te mātauranga, whāngai te tinana. Engari, when you don't have access to really good healthy food, there are damages there. And when we talk about suicide, we talk about the impacts of suicide on our whānau. It's like one big rock that's been dropped in on a calm lake. The ripples just ripple out, and it has generations of that. So that's why it's so important for our whānau to have access to mirimiri, the essence of Papatuanuku, and have their hands in the soil. This particular picture down there on the bottom right-hand side, that's actually the line that's coming to pick up kaika, which Lionel was going to cover in a little bit more depth when we join Tangaroa to Papatuanuku. But this is a regular sign. I'm not going to say, but this is a regular sign. This is a regular sign because this is our way as Papatuanuku Marae to contribute to the goodness and give our traditional kais back to our family.
But being the sustainable, self-sufficient marae is looking at how we can bring some wellness, well-being.
Aye, intergenerational healing. There's like 5, 6 generations, great-grandparents, grandparents, all the way down to mokopuna. That's the type of, those are the whānau that we're having to deal with. And there are many organizations and many providers and many marae out there where we're all in that same kitchen together, cooking up good solutions to try and make a difference there. Intergenerational healing, it exists.
That kaupapa is about food as the nourishment. If food is the rongoa, if rongoa is the kai, then the kaupapa is about having accessibility and affordability for our whānau so they can, you know, it's easier to get a vape and a V-drink than it is to get the really good quality kai. And most of it is about measuring the type of kai that we're eating, you know, and the type of food that we're eating, where a lot of our kids are consuming, you know, toxic loaded, sugar loaded drinks and food. So the options are very minimal for us here in Mangere. So, you know, Papatuanuku is the light for some of us. We call it the antioch, you know, we call it the counterforce that needs to be in these spaces for people that are on low socioeconomic, that are most vulnerable. So, yeah.
So this is a picture of our maara. During the time when even before COVID came in, we've always been a part of the fabric of our whānau. Our maara has always been there for whānau to harvest out of. During the lockdown, we've had to harvest a lot of our kai so that we could change kai out from the boxes from processed foods and putting fresh kai in there, because that's our second skin. And we're always mindful is that whatever we give to our whānau, we picture our mothers on the other side of their door. Would she like this? Should I give the biggest kamokamo, our puha, our hua? So when we harvest from our own, that's the only way, it's the safest place of where we can access kai that has been grown under the hua parakore principles. But also when you look at the size of our maara, we'll literally be lucky to be, we have a zero economy. So we recycle and upcycle everything. We compost, we do as much as we can. Anything that's been gifted, it's a zero economy, $1 million koha. So this is what we expose our whānau to.
So this is our quick turnaround crop. A lot of our crops are grown for market, to build that economy for our whānau, so we can get resources, get more tools, more wheelbarrows. So that the last insert of the garden is about us participating in the market scene, but also to get our whānau involved in and understanding the value of different sorts of foods, not just the kumara, because we've been kumara for about 30 years now. Yeah.
So we've given you the first slides that we took you through is what exists outside our gates. What exists outside Papatuanuku Marae. One of the most important kaupapa that we plant into our whānau is the importance of abundance. The importance of giving abundance and sharing the abundance of your table and your mātauranga. What you have here on the left-hand side of our frame there is that these are our two girls that lead the drive for our markets in Greyland. They get up 4 o'clock in the morning. Oh no, they're there. There's a crew of them. They harvest fresh crop out of the garden the Saturday afternoon. Now, of course, rangatahi on the Saturday afternoon, they do all sorts of other stuff. But our rangatahi, and with the leadership of Lionel, he's given them, our rangatahi are our rangatira. They are our role models. So they lead our Greyland market rollout, and that's down in town. We sell our produce down there. We could move our kumara for $3.20, and then they will buy it. You try and move kumara at Mangere markets for $3.20, they're gonna think you're a rip-off. Engari, so we choose the market because of the narrative and the stories of Hua Parakore and our Marae. Kea koe Lionel.
The interesting thing is that we are the only Māori at Greyland. There's no Māori at Parnell market. So we're hoping to increase our position, but increase visibility for us as a marae, but also increasing our participation in a localized food system. So we want people to participate in this, the economic side, or not only just the well-being side, but also the economic side. And that's about, I think for us, the other initiative is to encourage people to grow food in our little space so they could perhaps subsidize their power bill or the petrol and petrol prices, inflation, all that sort of stuff. Building economy. See, the rhyming word is health and wealth. So abundance is the goal for us, to get people out of the stress of thinking about how am I going to pay my school fees, how am I going to get uniforms. So that looks like a 12x4 plot, and how we can support them in growing their kai.
Ka pai. So one of the key questions on our presentation is, why is Hua Parakore needed in more now than ever? Because it needs to be in our everyday language. It needs to be planted into our mokopuna. It needs to be planted in our mokopuna right here, because these are all the schools come through and they're flooded with the language of Hua Parakore. Is it enough to just grow kai? Kareko. It's equally important to plant the seed the goodness of an abundance of kai. Plant the seed into our mokopuna so they carry it, so they look after it as they move into the future.
Ka pai, ka tangi te pere, korongo au I te kau kuawau, must be almost that time of the year. So we'll just do this one slide.
Ka pai.
We'll just go through this. Kaika impacts. So this was about addressing some of that food insecurity, food poverty that's going on in our community. Kaika in partnership. We'll go to the next slide with legacy. We were able to, we're trying to create employment and also utilize what people think is waste. That's our other big kaupapa, is utilizing para, green waste, composting, and then we're up to 200,000 kilos of diversion. So every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we're feeding people. We have people outside the marae that line up 4 fish heads and frames. We're working on fish emulsion that goes back into the soil. And as you can see, there's an iconic award for the kumara, and partnering up with Peter Gordon, the likes of Peter Gordon, Homeland, Baduzi, other Māori chefs. We have the means to support us in our endeavours to bring wellness and well-being to our community. And what an awesome support! It's like companion planting. Is that right, Wha?
That is very much like companion planting. Ahako no hea te tangata, regardless of what culture they are or where they come from. If they bring skills like this for our kura kaupapa kids, and you see that picture back there? Oh, that picture, oh, no, not that one. You see that picture there? That's your fish heads. That's what your fish head will look like if you, and that's what our babies are learning. No data. Smell of an oily rag. We've all been there.
Being resourceful, yeah, doing what you can with what you have, knowing the impacts. We think about the philosophy of manaaki, looking after those who are Parakore, the kaupapa, the principles, and we're so privileged. We think about Uncle Percy and his endeavours to bring our people into this verification of what validates good food. Whakapapa, make me land, the feminine, the nurturing aspect of the woman, yeah. Make me land. The divine senses, honoring others as equal or as of more importance than your own, expressed through hospitality and generosity, thus building unity and elevating the status of all our people. Whānau.
So when in closing, we need to eat and breathe hua parakore, not just in the maara, but on the political platform. As our marae, we've written it up in all our business plans and our strategic alliances. We make sure we know the whakapapa of the partner on the other side. We need to make sure they got mana. We need to balance Te Ao Turoa. We need to know that it's reciprocal, that māramatanga is around that knowledge sharing, not just a one-way kaupapa. And the Māori whānau, wairua and mana and the Māori is when it's all united together. So when you miri or ringa like this, you feel the heat, you feel the warmth, ko ora tonu te whānau, te ora tonu te koutou tinana. So hua parakore is yes, it is, you need to, is it enough to just grow kai? We need to be in that economical base, but we need to be there with pono in mind. Hua parakore is everything that we do. So, no reira whānau. When I come back to Jessica's kōrero around the one and the soil and composting, this is one statement. If you learn and you know how to do compost, you've learned how to make land. And if you learned how to make land, then you don't have to pay rates for it. So even in a bucket you can make compost. So that's where we have to move our whānau to, is planting gardens and buckets so that they can still feed their whānau and their mokopunas. So nō reira, tēnei taku mihi aroa ki a koutou, tēnei te wā. Ai, ngā mihi. Kei a koe Rhino, mo koro whakamutunga.
Yeah, community-led, community-driven, building capacity and capability in our whānau, giving them the tools, the education. We have this kōrero, feed a man a fish for a day. give them the tools, and that's us. So, yeah, ngā mihi atu. The kua parakore kaupapa is the decolonizing model. Let's get into it, whānau. Kia ora, ngā mihi.
Tēnā koe, ngā mihi.
Tēnā no kōrua, Hineamaru e Lionel. He miharo te wakarongo ki o kōrero. E koe, ka tangi te ngākau mō ngā uri, ko mati te whakamomori. Nā te kai, he kai kia hari te ora, ko kōrua te whakatinana o e rā kupu. E kōrua, we have a pātai from Urs, and Urs's pātai, I asked our whānau in the chat if anyone would like to have a pātai, and his pātai was around how do you balance the sharing of kai and also the creation or the ability to create a puna that enables you to well, I should go back to his kupu. I'm interested how you navigate between giving kai away to those in need and selling veggie boxes at the local market, having paid kai mahi volunteers. I guess, how do you operate with tikanga in a world that is everything except tikanga? O whakaro mo tērā pātai.
Hei a koe, Lionel?
Yeah, koha is not just about monetary. You know, we give in other ways, and I have to acknowledge my whānau. You know, we talk about this nucleus, and my daughter, my sons, partner, hey, the whole whānau. My sister lives on the marae. She's going through her journey of, you know, before the COVID, there was this other epidemic, and that's the crack epidemic. That's the pee epidemic. And I think about this space as a healing space for her. So, you know, it's not all about money. You know, it starts off with the man in the mirror. When Uncle Percy used to often talk about that. So, kai ika is another part of giving these corporates opportunities to look in the mirror. What are you doing with your kai? So, yeah, we're moving with grace.
And just a small addition to that one there is that when whānau come in and get kai, we look at the type of car that they're driving in on and the type of shoes that they're wearing. You don't need to be a scientist and what? You know, so and then compared to those that are just walking in off the street and got no shoes on. That's how we judge. That's how we make that statement. We also, if you want, we also do that reciprocal. I don't make it that Marae, work alongside with Lionel, you know, do some hours to do some trade-offs because that's part of that reciprocal manaaki. So it's really important that's important. One of the things that I do have a dislike for, and is how people say, oh, but you know, you're just creating a dependency. Our whakaaro is that you will never know what's beyond that door. So while we're able to serve, we will serve, but you're not going to put that lens on our eyes. So never ever think that you create a dependency because you never know what's behind the door. While they're at your doorstep, add something else so that they can come in, and then we're part of the sharing. So no reira, kia ora mo tērā.